What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, it's FPL Watchlist time for Game Week 31. So I'm going to take you through some players I've either got good upcoming fixtures or have just taken my eye and I'm looking to bring in either this week or certainly in the next few weeks. And there's also going to be a couple of players that I'm going to talk about at the start where they're not newly added to the watch list because I talked about them last week, but I do want to touch on them again for reasons you'll see in just a second. So if you enjoyed the video, please do give it a like, hit subscribe if you are new around here, and let's jump into it. So I know what's going to happen if I record the video and I don't talk about these two players. I get loads of comments saying, why have you not thought about Jota? Are you not still considering Wolves defenders, etc., right? So I'm just going to quickly talk about this because they are players that I talked about last week. So definitely Jota is someone that I'm looking at. He's come on, he scored 2 goals. There's always going to be that worry around him about whether he's going to start, right? So he is a bit like maybe some Man City players that when you see the Liverpool team sheet or basically before a Liverpool game, you're waiting for the team sheet to see if he plays. But we know he can get points off the bench. Personally, I prefer to pick absolutely nailed players, but his value is so good. Like if you're someone that likes underlying stats, if you look at his per 90 minutes, it's basically the same as Salah this season, right? Which is incredible. Now, Salah's numbers have dropped a bit, but his numbers are already so good that Jota looks great. But obviously, you have to take into account that he doesn't always play 90 minutes. But I think he didn't start last week or in Game Week 30 because of the international break. I think we're going to see him start plenty of times over the last 8 fixtures. So definitely still considering him. I'm not put off Wolves players necessarily after last night's performance. So before last night, right, it was Game Week 19 the last time they conceded more than 1 goal. Now, apart from when they played Man City, right? But obviously everyone concedes against Man City. Now, obviously, conceding 1 goal for an FPL defender is almost as frustrating as conceding 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, right? The amount of points difference is not that much. Once you concede, you don't get the clean sheet. I get that, but it shows that defensively they're not a bad team, right? And if you look at the underlying stats, I've talked about this quite a lot already, they're looking like a top 5 team, right? Which I know no one will agree with because of how they've performed this season, but it's something I have taken note of. Now, last night, one of the big differences was that Bolly was missing. Big miss, but they went to a back 4 instead of playing a back 5. So they had Semedo playing as like a fullback rather than a wing back, and they just had Cody and Saiss, right? Usually they would have Bolly there, they'd be a bit more stable. They're used to that back 5 formation. Back 4 just has not worked for Wolves at all. So yes, they are still on the watch list for me, Wolves defenders, but a lot of it is going to come down to what is the injury status on Bolly. Unfortunately, Nuno is not necessarily a manager that gives us great updates every week, but hopefully we'll get some news before the deadline. So I'm not writing them off. They're just not included in this video, apart from the last kind of 2.5 minutes where I've talked about them, where they are literally in this video. So hopefully that makes sense. Okay, so first up to add to the watch list this week, Trent Alexander-Arnold. Now, this realistically could be any Liverpool defender this week because I think their fixture run is just so good. You can see on screen, Villa, Leeds, Newcastle, Man United. Man United is the toughest fixture they have for the rest of the season. The rest are pretty much a sea of green. Debatable, I would say, that the next 2 fixtures aren't actually that good for clean sheets. Villa at home, Leeds away, but I think Liverpool have been looking a bit more stable, which we'll come on to in just a second. But yeah, this could be Quebec, this could be Phillips. I haven't written Robertson off, but if I'm going to pay over 7 million right now, I think Trent is looking better than Robertson on the eye test, and that is probably what I would go for. And stats-wise, he's also looking pretty good, which again we'll come on to in a minute. With Phillips versus Quebec, again, any Liverpool fans, let me know in the comments below. For me, it looks like Quebec is definitely the most senior centre back there, so maybe he is worth paying for. But it looks like Phillips is going to get enough minutes along the way, as long as he doesn't get injured. Maybe the Champions League game will give us some indication of that. But basically, if you're not paying for Trent, it possibly is worth just going all the way down to Phillips and just saving yourself quite a bit of money. My key decision is whether I want to pay the extra for Trent, and I'll talk about that in the team selection a bit more. But for now, he is definitely on the watch list. Now, I remember actually talking about Trent on Patreon, right? So I have a Patreon, link in the description below. This isn't like a forced ad or anything like that. But we were chatting in Slack about Trent and the Burnley game, right? Way back in Game Week 19. And I thought he looked pretty good. A few people disagreed. And look, his crosses weren't necessarily connecting, but he was really advanced. So I think he's looked quite good from an attacking sense for a while. He didn't really do anything in that double game week, but he did follow up with a 14-pointer versus Spurs. Since then, all the games like 4 or 5 after that, he wasn't great. with Fabinho and Henderson kind of playing centre-back. That's changed now. Fabinho's in midfield. Obviously, Henderson's injured. It would be great if he could come back too, of course, soon. But Quebec and Phillips have started to make a partnership in centre-back. I think they are now the centre-back partnership that's played the most minutes this season. That's how crazy the centre-back situation has been at Liverpool, right? Think about all the games that Henderson and Fabinho played together. They still didn't play as many as Quebec and Phillips, right? So absolutely ridiculous. And I think even though they're not Gomez and Van Dijk, they're still much better having proper defenders there with Fabinho shielding in front, right? And in the meantime, Trent has continued to look really attacking. So I had a look at some of the stats I got written down here. Only Luke Shaw has created more chances than Trent so far this season. No defender in the whole league for the whole season has had a higher expected goal involvement than Trent Alexander-Arnold. He's on 7.14. That even beats Cancelo. And think about how attacking we've talked about him being. And so far he's got 5 returns. So 5 returns from just over 7 expected goal involvement. So maybe slightly underperforming, but not by a huge amount. And the fixtures, like I said, cannot be understated either. So I think they've got at least 5 clean sheet possibilities in the last 8. Newcastle, Southampton, West Brom, Burnley and Palace. Ridiculous. Outside of that, it's pretty much the games in the next 4. So the 3 toughest fixtures are, or at least the 3 I think are the toughest for clean sheets. Villa, Leeds, Man United. The way Man United games have been going against the top 6, that could be a clean sheet anyway. Then you're just hoping for probably 1 out of Villa and Leeds, not even kind of take into account the fact, obviously, he can get attack and returns as well. And one of the big things for me with him is he's only 1.06% owned in the top 10k. Now, that is off livefpl.net. Obviously, they only can track that from last week. So with wildcards and transfers in this week, his ownership will go up. It won't be 1% anymore. But I wouldn't be surprised if it's still under 20. And I know people, when they look at differentials, they want like 5% differentials. I don't think that's realistic. If you can get a 20% owned player in the top 10k, that means 4 out of every 5 managers do not own him. To me, that is still a massive differential. Like Kevin De Bruyne, for me, was 23% last week. If he'd gone big, it would have been huge. So I think, although I don't like chasing differentials for the sake of it, or I've said that all the time, when you can get a big hitting player, a proven player with great fixtures, who's looking good on the eye, the stats back it up as well, then that's the kind of player that I want to go for. The only sticking point is he's 7.3 million. If you're on a wild card, it's easy. For someone like me who's not, it's a little bit trickier. It takes a little bit more kind of restructuring of funds, but I think it might be worth it. So he's firmly on the watch list. And I basically, since I made this video, I really want to bring him in. Okay, so Iheanacho, a lot of people got their eye on him, 5.8 million. And there's lots of reasons why I'm looking for a striker. Not only because I watched the West Ham game last night with lots of hope about Dawson and Antonio. And they got, 1 point between them, I think. So really awful. Antonio went off injured. He does tend to kind of go off precautionary when he feels his hamstring, because obviously he's had a lot of problems with injuries. So he doesn't wait for it to go. If he knows it's going to happen or is a little bit of a worry, he goes off, right? So they do manage Antonio quite a bit. He could be fit, but either way, Bamford's fixtures aren't great for the foreseeable or for the next kind of 3 fixtures, and Antonio is possibly out. So I've got to look for a striker. Now, he started against Man City at the weekend, which was promising. Didn't return, but I wouldn't have expected him to, right? Like, it's not the kind of game where I think, right, player hasn't returned, I don't bring him in. Frustratingly, though, Maddison didn't start. And what got worse was when Maddison came on, it was Iheanacho that went off and Perez stayed on. Now, I don't want to read into that too much, right? A sub within a game could mean anything. Maybe he was resting him for the next game, knowing that Man City was tough. Maybe he wanted to try something different. Maybe 2 strikers wasn't the way to play against Man City, etc. Recently, Leicester have been playing a 3-4-1-2. So they've been playing with wing-backs, 1 kind of number 10, and then 2 strikers in front, Iheanacho and Vardy. Now, Perez has been the man in behind Vardy and Iheanacho. That could be Maddison instead, right? That's what I was expecting. Maddison to slot straight back in and Perez to come out. And that will be the assumption. But unfortunately, we haven't seen Maddison start yet. So we don't know what Brendan Rodgers is thinking. Is he just going to leave Perez out? They could go anywhere. They could play Maddison and Perez behind Vardy. They could maybe put Perez a little bit forward or play an off Vardy and have Maddison in behind. It doesn't necessarily mean that Iheanacho is going to be the one that plays there. But he's also been great, right? His underlying numbers are looking good. He's had 11 shots in the box, 9 chances created over the last 6. His XG is 2.93, expected assist 1.10. He's been crazy. And I would say if he keeps getting minutes, he's a bit like Lingard. The number of returns he's had so far in the number of matches is ridiculously high. He will not keep that up, neither will Lingard, but they are very cheap, and when they're guaranteed minutes, they're really good options, right? So for me, the problem is, do I go this week? Now, West Ham away looks like a difficult fixture, but Rice is out. I don't mean he's not going to be back for this Leicester game. And also, Soucek and Lingard both had slight knocks at the end, although I think they're okay, so they're probably not issues. But without Rice, it's a bit of an easier game. And obviously, Leicester are a really good team as well, so that helps. Noble came in and did a really good job, but I think it's going to be a bit more difficult against Leicester. So that's not a bad fixture, but it is probably the worst one of the next four. Then it's West Brom, Palace, Southampton. The thing in my mind is, I kind of wanted to see Maddison start. So do I jump the gun and just go for him this week, or do I give him one more week and get him in before the really good fixture? Like, he's 5.8 million. Even if he's 6.2 million by the time that deadline for 32 comes around, I don't really care. I'm not that stretched for money where I won't be able to afford him. So I'm definitely considering him. And after those fixtures, after the Southampton game, it's Newcastle. So for 5.8 million, it might just be worth the risk. And at some point, you could always go back to Bamford, back to Antonio, whatever it might be. Looking at his per 90 stats so far this season, 0.43 XG, 0.21 expected assists, similar to last year. But we do have to factor in a bit different to someone like Lingard. He's not necessarily guaranteed 90 minutes. He can come off early. I think we've seen a 70-minute substitution, one around 66 as well. If they want to change things up and Vardy's feeling fit and fine, you know, it ain't going to be Jamie Vardy that gets subbed. It's going to be Iheanacho. So that's always going to be in the back of my mind. But for 5.8 million, the numbers, I'm not really expecting him to keep up what he's done so far. I'm just expecting him to get enough returns for 5.8 million. And with those fixtures, it could be. So whether or not I take the risk with Maddison, I don't know. Let me know in the comments below. Like, if you're a Leicester fan, I fully know that when Maddison's fit, he's in that team. The question is, where does he play and who comes out? So sticking with Leicester, it's not guaranteed that if I go for a defender swap this week, and obviously I'm still waiting to see what's happening with Tierney. It sounds like he's going to be out for a couple of weeks at least, so I'm probably going to have to transfer him out. If I don't go for Trent, it doesn't necessarily mean I directly go for Quebec or Phillips, right? Yes, they're cheap. Yes, their fixtures are good. But I think obviously the reason you go for Trent is because of massive attacking potential. So if you can't get him, I don't necessarily default to another Liverpool defender. So it could be Azpilicueta, double up instead with Rudiger. Or I could look to Leicester for exactly the same reason I'm looking at Iheanacho. The fixtures are great, right? West Brom, Palace and Southampton in particular. West Ham probably a little bit more difficult, although if Antonio was missing out, it's maybe a little bit easier. Now, we're going to come on to Castagna as an attacking threat in a minute. I think he looked quite good at the start of the season. And when I checked his numbers when he first came into the league, I think it was Atalanta he played at before, they were always pretty good. His expected goal involvement was around 0.2 per 90, which is pretty good for a fullback. So he looks good, but we'll come on to his current attacking threat. And I'm not really sure what's going on, to be completely honest with you. So, yeah, West Brom, West Ham, Palace, Southampton, and then Newcastle. Great opportunity for clean sheets. The end of the season run for Leicester is not great. Obviously, with defenders, you've got rotation. You can play, and when I say rotation, I don't mean for them. I mean for players in your team. I don't have to play him every single week. But at 5.7 million, he is taking up a large kind of chunk of the budget. So Man United, Chelsea and Spurs to end the season is not necessarily ideal. The thing I like about Leicester fullbacks, and you could look at Ricardo Pereira as well, I'm going to talk about him in just a minute, is they're playing as wing-backs. So they're playing this 3-4-1-2 formation. They might go back to a back four at some point. It's going to depend who's fit and available elsewhere. And with Barnes out, they need players to provide width. So that's one of the things that Castagna and Pereira are doing. The problem is, he's played 90 minutes in each of the last 6 matches. And I looked at his individual stats, as you can see. 5 chances created is okay. 1 shot in the box. Now, to put that 5 chances created into context, I had a look. There's about 20 other defenders that have created 6 or more. So he's not really been that attacking. And they've not been mega difficult fixtures either that they've played. So included in the 6 were Sheffield United, Brighton, Burnley, Arsenal and Villa. So not necessarily all easy fixtures, but you would expect wing-backs to attack in those kind of fixtures, right? I had a look at Pereira as well. He's created 1 less chance, which isn't great, but then he's had, I think it was 6 shots in the box. 6 shots with 4 of them inside the box. So Ricardo actually looks like more of a goal threat than Castagna, albeit his stats aren't really that high either. Plus, he costs 5.9 million. So once you go to that kind of price, you're then looking at Azpilicueta, and probably with that defence for Chelsea, which I'm not put off of at all because of the West Brom game, he might be a better option. So it just worries me a little bit that for wing-backs, they're not probably a bit more attacking. It tells me that the play is going through kind of Iheanacho, Vardy, Perez, maybe Maddison when he's back instead. And obviously we know that Maddison is such a creative force for Leicester anyway, that a lot of the chances are going to fall to him to create. But Castagna at the start of the season was very attacking. We know he's been injured quite a lot. Maybe that's hampered, performances, kind of stopped starting all the season. And perhaps he didn't have that previous seasons before he came to Leicester. So I'm not completely put off him. I just don't know if it's worth saving the 0.2 million over going for Ricardo Pereira at Leicester or even Azpilicueta. So Leicester defenders definitely on the watch list. It's just whether or not it's worth the saving over Trent. Like I said, it's a lot of money to get to Trent Alexander-Arnold, but is it worth it? It possibly is. So that's it for this one. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Please do give it a like and hit subscribe if you're new around here. You may have noticed this video went out a little bit earlier in the day than I usually put my videos out. That's because I'm hoping to have another one later this evening, so please do look forward to that. I'll have the game week preview tomorrow, team selection Thursday, and then captaincy and deadline stream on Friday. So there's loads more to come. Make sure you've hit that notification bell if you have subscribed. If you want to support me and the channel a little bit further, if you've been enjoying everything you've been seeing so far this season, make sure to check out Patreon, link in the description below. Everyone that signs up obviously already up on the Legends wall, so thank you to everybody that already has. If you want to check it out, like I said, link in the description below, as easy as that. I'll leave that one there. Hopefully I'll have a video this evening, I don't know, 6, 7, 8, 9 o'clock, something along those lines. Hit that notification bell, you'll know when it's out. And then yeah, I'll be back for the game week preview tomorrow, so look out for a post on YouTube and Twitter asking for questions for that and topics to cover. And yeah, that's it. I'll see you soon.